Hello and welcome to this episode of Guest Practices. The fast pace of how we live and work today is driving business into incremental and radical change. As a constant, just consider digital transformation, workforce transformation, post-pandemic, the hybrid workplace, the blended workforce, etc. Who do we turn to in these moments for inspiration, for opportunity, for ideas? It's so-called thought leaders, professionals and experts who share knowledge, experiences, insights, ideas to help others in their own thinking and actions. People like Simon Sinek, Cheryl Snap-Connor, Seth Godin, Lolly Daskell and more. They've all been at the top of their game for years. In fact, these thought leaders are helping to shape and consolidate the uncertain, unpredictable and ever-changing landscape we find ourselves in, to help those of us in business learn, understand, make the appropriate decisions and make progress. But what's their secret sauce? What is thought leadership when it comes down to it? And who's the expert on thought leaders themselves? Well, it's Mindy Gibbins-Klein, my guest for today, and she's here to talk about the very topic. The topic of both her books 24 Karat Bold and The Thoughtful Leader. These books show its readers how they too can become experts in their field and the thought leaders for today and tomorrow. Let's find out more. Hello and welcome to this episode of Guest Practices, and I'm joined by Mindy Gibbins-Klein. Mindy, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for inviting me.
Well, you have many hats. You're a business leader, you're an author, and the two books today that we'll be talking about are the two that I see on the screen, The Thoughtful Leader and 24 Karat Bold. So maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about yourself, your businesses, and these books.
Absolutely, thanks. So I am absolutely passionate about thought leadership and what I call thoughtful leadership. And this comes from working in the book industry for nearly 20 years. So when I first left corporate, 19 years ago to be precise, I had my first book coming out. I also had my first business that I was starting, which was a coaching business, and another business, which was a marketing consultancy. So right from day one, I've had multiple hats. And what happened was my first book started taking off. People really were interested in book writing, but most people were never going to do it, didn't know where to start, etc. So I transformed my coaching and marketing consultancy into one that just helped aspiring authors. And fast forward to today, well, actually fast forward 10 years, and I realized that a lot of people were writing books, but were not always having the success they wanted or the results. And really, when we're talking about a business book or a book about someone's expertise, the kind you've written, for example, it really does deserve to open doors to great opportunities. And you know how that works, but unfortunately, I don't know, some people don't have the skill or the understanding. So I wrote 24 Karat Bold to talk about thought leadership, and the book being part of that. So everything then transformed to thought leadership. And then when that term became overused and abused, I then created thoughtful leadership to kind of raise the bar a bit, and more than a bit. And and that's where I play. And I always want to make sure that people are raising the bar. That's what my work is all about.
Well, and I've benefited from this. Let's face it. And now I've been through that process and published that book. There's just no way I could have done that on my own. And I think with the advice you and your team gave me and the different directions that we could travel, it just makes the whole process far easier, I have to say, from my point of view. But I'm able to then focus on what really matters behind it as well and getting the messaging out. But going back, is like you're a business leader, you're a coach, you're an author, you help lots of people, and you've really carved out also this niche yourself as a leadership guru. You own thought leadership, and there are so many definitions of what a thought leader actually is, and I thought that'd be a really great place to start. Can you explain that simply for us and why you feel there is potential in lots of business professionals to step up as experts in their field?
Thanks. There is potential, and I think there's an obligation as well, because with the position of leadership comes this responsibility. And some people shirk that, ignore that, abdicate. But I really think that is what leadership is. Some people are kind of forced into a leadership position, but let's talk about everybody who is in place, who has some kind of influence. And my goal is to help people understand that there are specific things they can do to position themselves as a go-to person, as a credible expert, but more importantly, as somebody who has positive intention and is creating positive change in the industry that they're in, and also possibly in society as a whole. I think big, as I know you do too. So the 4 attributes of a real thought leader I came up with in 2008. So coming up to 13 years now, lucky 13. And the reason was that there weren't any, as far as I was concerned, there were no real criteria. It was just one of those terms. So if people really do aspire to achieve that position, and you know what, I mean, everybody knows what a go-to person is. You name an industry or a topic and people go, oh yeah, you know, that's the household name. That's the person who leaps to mind. And some people really deserve that. It's nothing to do with a book at this point, although it's harder to achieve that position and that recognition without a book. But it's a strategy. I don't know if you want me to get into what are the 4 attributes.
Well, you've tantalizingly left that for us. We'll get to it. But just in terms of what you've just said, something that really resonated for me there about what it means, these lots of different facets and being that positive change agent in your industry, your company, but also society, particularly now, for leaders to be more compassionate, more forces for good societally, as thinking about the planet as much as the communities that they serve, is really important. So yes, and I'm absolutely sure also not everybody can become experts, but many would like to. So this is the perfect segue into those 4 elements. What are those 4 qualities that you look for in execs as potential thought leaders of tomorrow, and how do you convince them to do something about it?
Well, couple of points. It's not about convincing. It's about sharing what is available and what is possible, and sharing the how-to, the step-by-step way to achieve it. And then it's a choice. Thought leadership is a choice. Thoughtful leadership is definitely a choice. It's not for everyone. However, there's room for a lot of thought leaders out there, especially if they claim their own niched or micro-niched space. So the 4 attributes are reach, and this means how many you reach, but how relevant your reach is. Engagement, because there's no point having a lot of people who follow you, but they're not engaged. Authority, which is the piece that many people understand. They think thought leadership is just about authority. I'm saying it's not, but also specific ways to measure authority. And then the L, I'm just redoing the book. We're creating the 3rd edition, and I will tell everybody here, this is the sneak preview, L was longevity. And right now, I'm thinking of changing it to legacy, because a lot of people use that word, but I'm finding it difficult to merge the 2, because it is about legacy, but in the sense that your impact lasts a long time. So I may call it longevity / legacy, but that's kind of long. Anyway, there are things that you can do as an executive or a business leader or owner or entrepreneur, and you can do more in each of these areas. And the cumulative effect, the overall effect, is that you are seen by the right people, respected by the right people, and invited to opportunities. And you know, that's what's possible. And then it's a choice, as I say.
Well, it's fascinating. You know, I love that change of the L. I mean, this really is for real, isn't it? The 4, your 4 components. And funny you should mention it. That longevity, for me, it can also, I suppose, fit in the reach. You've got the breadth, depth, and duration that you could have in the reach, because legacy really does it for me. You know, that's a great way. You heard it here first, folks. That's excellent.
It's changing. It's changing.
That's fantastic. We have an exclusive. Fantastic. So you mentioned that you mentioned the book there, 24 Karat Bold. So how do both of those books, actually, 24 Karat Bold and The Thoughtful Leader, guide a potential thought leader through that journey of self-discovery and then actually becoming that?
Well, I think my backdrop is backwards. It's not backwards, but what I always suggest to people is read 24 Karat Bold first, or listen to it. Get that understanding first, because the thoughtful leadership in general is like thought leadership 2.0. So you kind of need to understand the basics, the foundation first, and then build on it. And what I do is I outlined the 4 elements, the 4 attributes in 24 Karat Bold. And the premise is be bold and opinionated, yet respectful. And that I had to reiterate when I wrote The Thoughtful Leader, because I think many people understood the boldness, very excited about sharing their opinions. Since 2008, if you think about how social media has proliferated and just how the conversation about most important topics has evolved, it hasn't always done so with the right kind of thoughtfulness or respect. And that's really, really important to me. You and I have known each other for a little while. You know, this is about character. This is about your ethics. For me, it's pointless just being bold. We've seen bold leaders who have little to no respect for others. I won't name names. It's really not the point. The point is to get your followers engaged and following you for the right reasons, because they engage with your values as well as the message. So that's where the thoughtful leader comes in. So 24 Karat Bold first, and then once that is assimilated into your life, then go for the next level, which is the thoughtful leader.
You know, it's interesting, isn't it? We all follow thought leaders, gurus, experts in our industry or our field that we like. And it is becoming more and more, even just reflecting on what you said there is so much about the human qualities that make it first, the values alignment. There has to be some level of engagement first, no matter how good they are. Because if you kind of switched off from them from minute one, you maybe not going to be as engaged, are you? And I think that's really some of the pitfalls that many might fall into first off, this combination of what does your personal brand look like, how you should behave as much as the skills, and then what's the messages that you should get there. So what are some of those steps that experts who are starting on this journey should take to help them avoid some of those traps? And any tips that you can share around that to get them going and to help them avoid the mistakes?
Sure. It starts with intention. That's the key to, I was going to say have the right intention. There's no such thing as the right intention except for the right intention for you. But to understand, what is your intention? What are you trying to do in your work, in your industry, in the world? And to have that understanding of why you're doing it will give you the energy to go and do something more, because it does take more effort to be a thought leader, and a thoughtful thought leader as well. It will require more effort, and that's why it's not for everyone. It's available to everyone, but it's not for the faint-hearted, as I say in my books. It requires more time, energy, effort. It requires more thought. But I guess that's the first step, is to just put thought into whether you want to really go for it, whether you feel that this is your right, this is your obligation, as I was saying before, whether this is exciting to be a leading light in your industry, because some people really just want an easy life and a quiet life, and that's fine. You know, there's a lot of pressure on people. Since I came out with since I came out with 24 Karat Bold, if we go right back, there have been a lot of, expert factory kind of programs, a lot of people spouting off, you've got to be the go-to person, and you don't got to be. There's no pressure at all. But the thing that I would love for our viewers and listeners to understand is, if you don't know the rules, then you can't play the game. Once you know the rules, you can then decide if you're going to play the game, how you're going to play the game, how long you're going to play the game. But it starts with understanding what's possible, what's available. And that is all I'm doing. Is I'm an awareness bringer. That's not my official title, but I just really want people to understand their options in life and business. And well, we could get philosophical, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. And so many of these vodcasts actually that we've had comes back to one point, which is mindset and attitude. I think understanding where we are on that, and then you can create that intent, you can create the energy around it that you need, and you can mobilize. So just going deeper into that, what are maybe some of the common mistakes people might make first that they could avoid if they read these books, Mindy?
Well, the thing that I see happening out in the world is the veneer of clever being introduced before the actual structure and substance is there. So what happens if you try to paint veneer on something that isn't solid? It starts peeling off immediately, I think. I'm not the woodworker in my family, my husband is. But if you know what I mean, the substance is the all important thing. And so just to give you an example, in the book world, and we get this, people will inquire, how can they get help with their book? And we have lots of ways to help, as you know. But they start by saying, and I've already got the title, and they've come up with some clever thing. And it's hard to start with a title, especially when they've done some kind of clever rhyming, trendy thing. We believe in having that substance really strong, having everything put together so that you can then have the right veneer or outward facing phrase or title. And this goes for other things as well. We've got people who are obsessed with the brand name or the fame name, or and I work with words for a living. I love clever puns, plays on words, all kinds of poetic things, references to mythology. However, get the groundwork done first. So this is something for people to be aware of and to start noticing where you've got, trendy, clever pressure from different organizations to kind of, do that veneer first. And being aware of that is really powerful. There is another one if we have time. Yes? There is a place for outsourcing and delegating. However, you can't outsource your thinking. And I do see this, unfortunately, with a lot of busy people, with a lot of executives who are too busy. However, there's a reason why the executive or the business leader is in that position, in that role. Usually, they've earned it, not always. But really, there is only one person who can think through your best ideas, and that's you. So I see this trend of outsourcing and delegating things that really shouldn't be outsourced. I mean, you wouldn't outsource your dentist appointment. You've got to go yourself, And so there are certain things that can only be done by the thought leader or the thoughtful leader. So becoming aware of that as well. It's very tempting to say, I haven't got time. You're going to spend more time if you outsource or delegate to somebody who doesn't get it. You're going to end up redoing it all anyway, as you and I have seen with colleagues who've tried to shortcut things.
Yeah, don't outsource your expertise. That's a really good tip there. But I love the veneer of clever, and it's a trap I fell into. You'll know this. When I came with my book to you, I got the title, I've got the cover design, but the cover design, which I thought was really good. I don't use the word clever. I think it was good at the time. But I hadn't seen a very specific thing that you guys had seen in it. And then your team, I think it was Neil on your team, went away and had a look at it and did it. And what he's come up with, what you guys have come up with to take to market, is 10 times better than what I had there.
Only 10?
Well, it was starting at a very high base, but it was but really incredible. And what it's done actually, which I hadn't thought of when I was going, is it's also given me a brand that I can use, this thumbprint and the echo marks that sort of becomes synonymous with the book and my thought leadership as on empowered working. So I totally get that, and it's something I benefited from it. So I guess then, so almost talking to me and to others who have just established themselves in this kind of way, certainly from the book point of view, for personally, once we become a thought leader, establish this expertise in these areas, how do we stay there and build on that position from your experience?
Well, Jeremy, I have to clarify something. It's in all my books and all my podcasts. You don't claim the title thought leader. I allowed you to use the term my thought leadership before, but we must never call ourselves a thought leader. And this is the tricky thing. You know, the term evolved in academia, where your peers and mentors decided, and even then I said before, there were no criteria. So it was very random, which is what really created that energy in me to you know, establish something that had more, I don't know, more substance and real tangible metrics. So that's the first thing, is you don't call yourself one. And secondly, it's not just the peers and mentors, your market will decide. So when my clients do the thought leadership strategy work with me, and we start with blank sheets, and we start with all ideas and content available and open to us, then creating that thought leadership strategy and every aspect of it, and the reach, engagement, authority, longevity strategy, there's so much that goes into it. And yet there's still no guarantee that the market will call that person a thought leader. So we have to let go of the outcome. You've heard me say this before in the book context. We do our best, and then, you know, the universe will determine. In this case, it's a little bit more scientific. The market has certain expectations. And I'm speaking to everybody. Think about your market. What do they expect? I mentioned science, a scientific approach. If you're in the scientific fields, there are certain things. You can't just say this drug works, you know, with no evidence and no testing. And, you know, you can't just say we're going to build this building with no blueprint. You know, there are certain things that are expected. But even then, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of experts. There's a room for a lot of experts. So having said all of that, you're going to put your best work out there. That's my wish for people. They put their best foot forward and their best content out there in the best possible way with the right strategy. And then they have to hope that the market responds in the way they want. And if not, you can adjust certain elements. That's the point about having a strategy, as opposed to just luck.
Well, it's almost thinking of it as a business, isn't it? And as you would for a business, be planful like that. What's your strategy? What are the tactics to help you get there? What are the things that you need to change along the way and can learn from? Who do you get feedback from? You know, to constantly sharpen the saw, as we say, makes a lot of sense. And it also reinforces these 4 qualities that you were talking about earlier, which any of the listeners or viewers can get through your books. And on that point, because it's been a fascinating conversation, we could go far deeper into this, I'm sure. But if people want to get in touch now and have more of a conversation with you, get hold of your books, find out more, how do they do it, Mindy?
So my name is quite long, and there's a hyphen, and it's tricky. So I've created Mindy GK. That's my alter ego. It's still me. Mindy GK. I want one name, like Madonna or Beyonce. No, maybe not.
Very good.
MindyGK.com, Mindy GK on Twitter. They'll find me. And also Book Midwife, which is our most successful brand. It's a metaphor. I'm not a real midwife, but if somebody's interested in books, that's, you know, we're all over the web 19 years now with that brand. So, and they, you know, I'm sure in the show notes, there's links and things. So the difference between me and other people who work in this space, I think, is I love having a chat with anyone and everyone. And you'll find a lot of people will make you jump through a bunch of hoops, fill in forms, you know, speak to the gatekeepers. And I have about 20 chats a week with people where I don't know where it's going to lead. But I leave space in my calendar for those chats because you just don't know. So I hope people do reach out.
Gotcha. So it's reach out to Mindy GK, the Book Midwife. All those of you watching, you'll see these up on the screen below. You can replay this if you're listening to get in touch. I've benefited from Mindy's experience and expertise. I really understand the value that can bring, no matter how long we've been in business, no matter what expertise that we think we've had. And I've also made a few notes myself. Don't call myself a thought leader is the first underscored and start point on my list. So I continue to learn. Mindy Gibbins-Klein, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a fascinating journey. Thanks a lot. Thank you for joining our Guest Practices videocast. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel through the link below, or check out our website to access more in our current series of expert interviews.